Welcome to my series, Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence. As a certified image professional and in my business Style for Life, I have the good fortune to work with some of Australia's most influential women who are committed to making a difference in the world and are not afraid to showcase their strength and courage with a powerful visual brand. These women appreciate that an authentic image makes them even more credible, confident, and impressive than they appear on paper. But as an ambitious woman, the journey to the C-suite can be filled with insecurity, fear, judgment, and second-guessing all around whether your executive presence and gravitas is enough. Executive presence is one of the most important skills for success in business, but it's also the least understood, which is why I wanted to start this series. Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence provides insights into how to develop and use executive presence as a powerful tool for career advancement through interviews with the most accomplished senior executive women in Australia. These women are highly respected leaders in their fields who concur that executive presence is a skill that should be learned and mastered to make a very real difference, and they share how to use it to achieve success both personally and professionally, and what executive presence has meant for them. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Cheryl Gray. Now, having built her own strategic communication for following more than 25 years in consulting, Cheryl recently took on the role of CEO of Women's Network Australia. She began her career as a journalist before becoming senior media advisor for a prominent female senator and leader of a national political party. Cheryl has worked extensively with government, SMEs and large corporations. In 2018, she travelled to China as part of the first all-female Australian trade delegation to the country, organised by the China-Australia Trade and Investment Council. Cheryl is board chair of a disability services organisation and has held a number of not-for-profit board roles. Fascinating background, Cheryl.
Thank you, Julie. It's lovely to talk to you today. And I'm coming to you from sunny Queensland. So if you hear a bit of wildlife in the background, I am outside, which is not my normal surroundings, but I think it's part of executive presence is that you can do anything anywhere, isn't it?
Well, you have to adapt to what's happening in the moment, I guess.
That's right.
So just on that point, can you tell me a time in your career when you first realised the importance of executive presence?
I think it was when I was very young. Actually, I started as a journalist in a newsroom for a metropolitan newspaper, and as part of that, I played a role in working in the chief of staff's office, and that job entailed having to go into what was called news conference every afternoon. So about 4 o'clock, all of the key management team would go in and decide what was going to be on the front page of the paper, which stories would go where. So I, as a young, naive journalist, went into my first news conference, and I very quickly understood that it was about pitching the best stories, or what we thought were the best stories of the day, to get the best run in the newspaper. And I think I quickly realised that it wasn't so much how great the story was, it was actually how you sold it in news conference every day. And that required, a certain degree of I guess, a sales pitch on behalf of what you thought was the best story. So if you weren't able to articulate why you felt that this particular story was a great story, suited our audience, and was the best fit for the newspaper, then you weren't likely to be able to get that story on the front page. So, and in those days, it was a case of, one or two at best women in the room of, 10 or so men. So, being able to hold your own and have that presence and make your point was really important. And I guess from that point onwards, it's always been something I've been acutely aware of.
You're talking largely about communication strategy, I guess. So what specific strategies did you use to be able to amplify your own voice and your own presence, and also the other women who you said that you were probably 2 out of 10 women in the room? What sort of things did you have to, sort of draw from to be able to get your point across?
I think there's lots to do with it, a lot of body language as well. Everything from where you sat around the table,
Mm,
trying to sit in the middle of the table so you were part of the conversation rather than tucked up the end somewhere as an afterthought. How you sat, how much space you take up, rather than leaning back, leaning forward, leaning into a conversation. So I guess I picked up on the cues of others that I could see around the room, and later on in meetings and so forth, where you could see people who really captured the attention of the room simply by the way they used their hand gestures, their arms, their body presence to be able to hold the conversation and bring it back to what they wanted to say. Obviously, the content of what you say is pretty important too. So some preparation and thought around what is the point, what is the contribution that I can make to this discussion, what is the outcome that I want to achieve, and what can I bring to the table, what can I contribute that they may not have thought of, what questions can I ask that no one else might ask that might actually help to contribute to a better outcome for everyone around the table. So it's not about me, putting myself in the middle of a conversation, but using some of those techniques to get a better outcome as a group or as a team, based on being able to be part of it, and using your body language and style and technique and voice. You have to be able to get that voice out there to be able to make a point in a conversation.
All very valid points you make. One, I'm curious because, as I work with appearance, and I always feel, well, I'm very passionate about appearance, and I feel that as part of the whole equation, appearance is also very important, because if you can't visibly notice a person in a room because they're not wearing, a bright color, or they're not presented well, or, and you mentioned the point also, where you sit at the table is very important. Making sure you get a position at the table which is in prominent view of all of the people who you need to make a good impression with. So what was how did you see it from your perspective in terms of how you prepared yourself visibly for those meetings, aside from use of correct body language, voice, inflections, all of those things, which obviously you've been very well trained in?
A couple of things that I always tend to use. It's that balance between dressing for comfort and dressing for, I suppose, impact. So things like coats and blazers, nicely fitted suits and so forth, that, let's face it, do have a bit of shoulder padding in there to give us a bit of shape.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
a bit of status. This was growing up in the 80s, as you know, big shoulder pads were all the rage.
I was there.
That's right. So that was a really big, for women in those times. The big shoulder padded suits were a really important part of that, and it's obviously not quite so these days, but certainly a nice classic style that isn't going to be distracting. Things that aren't too fiddly, too fussy, too frilly, I find personally can get in the way sometimes. But I also find that a comfortable but a comfortable heel with a bit of height for elevation. I also, particularly if you're standing, and whether it's seated at a boardroom table or having to stand, just lifts you up a bit, physically lifts you up, and can help both with your breathing and the way you then project yourself. So that it's actually that, I think, what you wear and the way you wear it plays an important part in that whole package of being able to deliver what it is you want to say. So a cross between comfort and style. I also find too much jewelry can be very distracting.
Mhm.
So not over blowing the jewelry, but I really like to have a watch or a bracelet. I don't know whether it was watching too many episodes of Wonder Woman with the bracelets, but sometimes I feel having a watch or a quite a thick bracelet makes me feel like I've got a bit of an armor on, without being distracting and banging tables and that sort of thing. So I probably am more of a minimalist in the way that I approach what I might wear, but it needs to add and be consistent with what you're presenting rather than at odds with it.
Well, it's all about being in alignment with the message you want
Correct.
to convey and communicate. Are you dressing to marry in with that, or are you coming in from, as making a big fashion statement, in which case people can look at you and think you're actually not on target. You're a
Yes.
little bit
Yeah.
left of center with what we're hearing. So everything has to, from my perspective anyway, everything needs to be marrying in together. So how you present, what the message is that you're trying to convey, how you conduct yourself. So it was really interesting, the point you made also about, wearing a bit of a heel makes you, it corrects your posture, and it makes you actually use your diaphragm and be able to get your voice across more. And I know when I put on a jacket, I feel a lot more empowered than when I don't have a jacket on. And
Absolutely.
sometimes also, a lot of women say putting on a heel, even a stiletto heel, actually makes them feel, you know, 10 feet taller and have a
Yes.
lot more courage and
Yep.
confidence going
Yep.
into meetings as well. So I guess that's one of the things that we as women, without it coming across as being sexist or anything, I mean, we have these things at our disposal to be able to use. So, why not use it if you're comfortable wearing those sorts of things?
And as you say, it's often about how it makes us feel as
Mm,
opposed to how others may perceive us.
mm,
If it makes you feel more confident and empowered, then you're going to be able to have the tools at your disposal to be able to make your point or contribute or take hold of a conversation. So I
mm.
think it's not about trying to create a false impression. It's helping to bolster yourself and your self-confidence with the tools that you need.
Yes, which then allows you to be able to deliver the message vocally and verbally, and to get the desired effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, there's nothing like, sometimes when you're putting on that jacket, and you might be the same, Julie, when you put on that jacket, you feel like I'm ready,
Yeah,
I've got my armor on.
that's right. Look, a lot of women do talk about their professional wardrobe as their suit of armor,
Yes.
but it's whether that suit of armor actually reflects your personality
Yes,
and
that's
who you're
right.
all about. Because anyone can go out and just buy, a suit off the rack and put it on and say, I'm ready to go. But if it's not in the style and fit and color and everything else that is, in really resonates with you as an individual, then you're still not projecting authentically.
I
So
agree.
a lot of,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of psychology in style, and that people really, don't understand, which is
Yes,
a shame.
yes.
It is a fabulous tool. So, just going back to the topic of executive presence, are you aware of any misconceptions that you've come across on the term executive presence and how individuals can overcome them?
Look, I think as women, we often think executive presence, or some of us
Mm,
think that executive presence is about dressing like a man, or being like a man, or behaving like a man, and I don't think that it is
mm,
about executive presence, as you quite rightly put out, is about being that authentic self.
mm,
So we don't need to pretend to be someone else, male or female. It is about unlocking that sense of qualities in ourselves that not only lift ourselves, but those around us. So to me, executive presence is being able to harness those tools, both what you see and what's coming out, to bring those others along, whether it's in a team situation, a meeting situation, or whatever it might be, to bring others along in a way that works for them. So using your executive presence to be in some ways that chameleon. If you need to be the joker, the comforter, the nurturer, how you can tap into those particular skills to make the others around you the most comfortable to perform the task, deliver the information, whatever it might be that really is the outcome. So I think executive presence to me is about the tools that we use to be able to be adaptable and be that person to not only bring out the best in ourselves, but for those around us as well. But I could be completely wrong, Julie. You're the expert in this.
Well, look, I don't think anyone is an expert in executive presence, and there's been quite a few books written on the topic. And what does it entail? I think there has to be a wholehearted approach. A lot of people focus on the leadership style aspect on it, communication style, appearance. Whilst it often only gets voted in at a very low percentage in terms of its level of importance, it is important because if you think about it, it's the visual, it's what people see. So we know that we make up our minds very quickly in those first few seconds when we see someone or meet someone. So if you're not visually presented in a way that you want other people to perceive you, then it just makes it doubly hard for you to be able to make up that lost ground and influence their decisions on whether they actually believe you or not. Are you, have you got credibility? Are you the person you say you are? So yeah, I just sometimes I still don't understand why people don't rate appearance as being one of those important elements. Because when you look at all of the people, notable politicians and some amazing celebrities, people that have done good for the world, they've all had a je ne sais quoi, a sort of an air about them, and people are drawn to them because they have charisma, they have gravitas, they have lovely nature about them, they're engaging, but they also are usually fairly well presented too. I've just lost your sound there, Cheryl.
Apologies, Julie. I think it says something about how much you care. And if you care enough about yourself to be considerate of how you are appearing to others, to me, it also means you care about them. It doesn't mean that you are necessarily driven by what others think about you, but you care enough to care about yourself and how you look and appear. And I think that goes a long way to what you were talking about, to creating that sense of gravitas, that sense of celebrity that we sort of talk about. But it also shows a level of confidence. It doesn't mean we all have to dress the same.
No.
But we know some amazing men and women who are able to use what they're wearing and how they are appearing to really elevate their personality, and whether it is as a celebrity that's all colourful and whatever it might be, they are able to use their appearance and the way they express themselves through dress and so forth to add to that image. So it to me, it shows some level of consideration and confidence in how they're putting themselves forward, which makes me feel like, well, this is someone I want to listen to and know more about and understand more. And ultimately, I think that's the value that comes forward.
Yes, true. Now, if we can just go back a few years and talk about the pandemic for a moment. The pandemic had a really big impact on women in the workplace. So what's been the biggest shift you've experienced in how women present themselves now versus before the pandemic?
Look, Look, I think like all things, there's some fantastic things and some terrible things
Mm,
that come out of any crisis situation, but obviously the pandemic. For a lot of women, the opportunity to have that flexibility to work from home has actually given them much more control over their environment. So the room they're in, the backdrop they're in, the way they're actually seen on screen, as so many of our meetings were and still are presented on screen, allows them to be able to at least be that person from the head and shoulders, even if they are wearing their tracky dacks down below. But I think that was indeed one of the dangers, because we get into this creating a half-half in ourselves, that, I'm actually in tracksuit mode, but I've just got a jacket on for the
mm,
appearance of a meeting.
mm,
And in some ways, I think there's a bit of a danger that comes through that, because you're not really on. You're only half on, if you know what I mean. So yes, there's absolutely been some great benefits for particularly for women in business, who don't then have to get engaged with the whole seat at the table politics that
mm,
perhaps was something that we had to deal with. There's a lot of women who can really grasp and master the techniques of holding great meetings online, virtual meetings, who can master the art of interacting with each other online, and developed a different executive presence through the screen. So, yeah, I think some real pluses have come out of it for women in business, but equally, as I say, there's some things that we perhaps still need to work on and be conscious of, if we're not really fully committing to any particular scenario.
mm. I guess being CEO of Women's Network, and I know you deal with a lot of women who are in their own business and also not in their own business. Um, Through COVID, that must have been quite an incredible shift that you saw in women. And what sort of resources did you have open to women, to be able to educate them and support them in that whole process and how to do business online?
Yes, a couple of things. COVID,
Mm,
the statistics tell us now that women did not fare well in general out of COVID, um, because a lot of the work that they had, casual work, for example, was the first to go.
mm,
So, in terms of the economic impact of COVID, we know that women were adversely impacted. We also know that a lot more women started businesses during COVID, some by necessity, some simply because they had the opportunity to. And so they were able to do something that perhaps was a hobby, and suddenly being given the opportunity to turn it into a business.
mm,
For us, though, it was really about very quickly educating our members about how to use this online environment, and how to switch from physical networking and the importance of body language and all of the interplay that goes with face-to-face networking and conversation, into an online environment. So the best way to do that is just to keep doing it. So we were having very regular weekly catch-ups, just networking opportunities for women to come online, to talk to each other, to share how they were going, good or bad, and actually get used to the technology. Because let's just remember, back before COVID, Zoom existed, Teams existed, but most of us didn't use them on very rare occasions. And it was usually to save interstate or overseas travel.
mm,
And then suddenly we were thrust into an environment where these are everyday tools that we continue to use as part of our working life. So everything about how to use the technology quickly and effectively, we saw as part of what we could do to help our women, but
mm,
also not forgetting how to network in person. Because at the end of it, yes, we were back out there, and unfortunately, a lot of women felt and have said to us they felt like they did lose their networks during COVID, whether they were client networks, friendship networks, professional networks, and so forth. When those events and social outings dried up, so too did a lot of those networking opportunities. So really, post-COVID, we've gone back to a lot of basic education about networking techniques and how to be an effective in-person networker, because we kind of went to sleep on that for a couple of years, and have had to, restore those skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I remember when I started doing, online meetings, it was through Skype. And
Yes,
then
that's right.
Zoom came on board, and it was like, oh my goodness, I've got to master something else. And I was
That's
so
right.
nervous the first time I did a Zoom presentation. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yep.
But, it is interesting, what's happened through that whole period and how people have become a lot more comfortable with presenting online, conducting meetings online, organising chat rooms, and bringing people to
Absolutely.
the table. It is amazing how we can facilitate business now as opposed to before. But I also agree with you that people need to not lose the technique and skill of being able to relate on a face-to-face basis. And then present yourself, because I found a lot of women said, oh my, they were thrown into disarray as soon as it was back to a face-to-face or hybrid type situation where they actually had to go out to meet people and have a coffee with people. It was like, well, what am I going to wear?
That's right.
What do I do now? We've been locked up for all this time, and particularly us here in Victoria, we had a horrid time of it.
Yes.
People had changed body shape, they put on
Yes.
weight, so what they used to wear pre that period was sort of no longer really relative anymore. They felt very uncomfortable in that. Their whole value systems in some cases had shifted and changed. So I think now it's starting to settle down a lot, and women are starting to sort of find their way and find, well, how do I want to dress now? How do I want to present to the world? And things have casualed down considerably, but I also see that there's now also another resurgence of that more polished, more formal sort of look, particularly in the recent fashion trends that have come through. So I think it'll gradually get back there, but it's quite interesting, having seen it go through the whole thing, because I did a lot of online work with women over COVID on how to do this and how to present yourself and how to communicate. And I worked with another colleague who worked on how the language that you use and, just being able to deliver that confidence. So it was a really fascinating period. I would never want to do it again, though.
No, but look how much we packed into that period. We went from here to here, like 2 intensive years of learning technology and how to present and, do group rooms and chats and all of this stuff. And then we've jumped out of that again, and we're not going back to what it was. We're going back to something that's different. But, really, when we look at the past 3 years, the skills and the way things have developed, it's pretty remarkable, really.
It is remarkable, and I've never been busier than when I was over those 3 years. I virtually hardly ever had an empty spot in my calendar.
Yes, yep.
Back to back, almost.
And look, and we know how to use calendars now. Like we use our calendars and our appointments in a totally different way compared to what we were doing before COVID. A lot of us were still paper-based, going out to meetings, having those coffee catch-ups, making appointments, physically making appointments, to, a much more automated, managed and controlled way of doing business these days. And it's happened because we had to do it. We've had to fit so much more into a day.
I don't know if that's sometimes a good thing or a bad thing.
Yes,
because
I
we
agree
still
with
really
you.
need our private lives. We still need our time out. And do we ever switch off? And I think that's really important, particularly for women, because we do have, often lots of things on our plates. that we do have that time to set aside for ourselves so we can sort of switch off.
But I think you'd know, Julie, too, the role that appearance and wardrobe and outfit plays in being able to separate our professional and personal lives as well.
Yes, look, totally. Yes, I hear you, and that is true. But I think because of what's happened, and because we've sort of morphed from having that very separate wardrobe for for business, and that very weekend wardrobe for weekend. One of the areas that women used to really struggle with was, well, what do I wear to a networking meeting? What do I wear to a parent-teacher interview? Because they didn't want to go looking like they were going to the boardroom, but they didn't have anything other than their weekend wear to wear. So what's happened now is that they've sort of shifted a little bit, and they've got this piece in the middle now, which is they can transition from one to another relatively easily by changing an accessory, changing a jacket, changing their shoes. And it just allows them to sort of make that very simple shift into the next occasion that they're going to quite simply, and it's not so much of a burden. But it's also about finding the right garments, and in the right everything. It's all about fabrics. It's all about comfort, really, at the end of the day. What's going to be comfortable for them, given the lifestyle that they now lead. Some, as you said, have gone from professional careers into running their own businesses, and I think you were right in saying that. I think the numbers will support that there are so many women who have actually started up their own businesses as a result of COVID. So they're doing different things. They're working from their garages. They're working from the spare bedroom they had out the back of the house. They're doing all, but they're still having to go out and meet with suppliers. They're still having to, take kids to school, attend to aging parents, all of these sorts of things. So, it's quite interesting.
Oh, it's fascinating. I would never have thought that there would be a time in my life that I could wear sand shoes, like sneakers.
The great sand shoe revolution, yes.
It's like,
taken
and now they're
everyone.
a fashion accessory. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a
Well,
revelation.
it's not just an accessory, it's almost a necessity now.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But it is because of a lot of that balance and those different roles that we're playing in this new era. So in some ways, I think it can be, and what you touched on, Julie, is a really important piece, and that is changing body shape and age. And I know you work with a lot of women in this period, that sort of post-50 period, which I'm in. And yeah, your body doesn't look and feel and do the things that it once did, and that can be really challenging, particularly when you go to buy clothes. And that's why someone like you and the services that you provide so important, because you can see things and know things about labels and brands and the quality of garments and the fabrics that many of us, most of us, can't. And I think you start to value that more when you have to be judicious about what you buy and where you spend your money, and make it last, and picking those classic lasting garments rather than necessarily fashionable or in season pieces is really interesting.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And it is challenging for a lot of women who hit that milestone in their lives, and it is a milestone in their lives, whatever way you look at it. And it's how they manage that, how they, and it all comes back to confidence, Cheryl, how they present themselves, what reflection they see in the mirror every day will determine how they interact and how productive they are and how they feel for the rest of the day, without question. So my job is to help them look and feel the best that they possibly can every day when they see that reflection in the window as they're walking past, a shop, or in the mirror before they leave home. Because if they know that that image is one that is, a positive one, they like what they see, then that can determine everything that happens for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And as you say, Julie, a lot of it is confidence. And I certainly find that my favourite outfits are the ones that make me feel good. and give you that sense of confidence. And yeah, but it's a really important part of who we are.
Mm. So you have you've got a big role, and you also have another little business on the side, don't you? A consultancy business.
Yeah. Yes, I still continue to work in the public relations,
Hmm.
strategic communication, and social media space. And again, that's another one that very much translates to an online business in many ways. But it also exposes me to a diverse range of clients. And that's where the sneakers come in, because often you can find yourself in a diverse range of workplaces,
Mm.
talking to a diverse range of people, and making sure that you're able to adapt to whatever those surroundings are. So one minute you're in the board room, the next minute you're out the back looking at a piece of mining machinery. You've got to be able to adapt, but again, still feel comfortable in those surroundings. So things like the tailored jackets that can come on and off are really great for those scenarios.
Absolutely, yes. Well, we have to be able to be adaptable, don't we?
Indeed.
So you do a lot of mentoring. You support and help a lot of women. Where do you see yourself maybe in 5 years' time from now? And what do you do to ensure that this whole thing about executive presence is a strength for you and for those that you are mentoring along the way?
Gosh, that's a very deep question, but a good one to have, because one of the things we talk about when we mentor people is, where do you want to be in 2, 3, 5 years' time? So it's important to flip the question on yourself. Look, I really enjoy being able to work with and impart some knowledge with young women, and who have been through a lot, quite frankly. When we talk about how much knowledge we've gained in that sort of three-year period, one of the things that a lot of younger women haven't had the opportunity to gain, though, is that experience of working in an office, just literally turning up every day and working with a group of people, good and bad, and understanding how an office environment functions.
Mm.
And so, and not just young women, but young men as well, who may have finished their school careers or their university careers and gone into a job which literally is through a computer screen.
Mm.
And now that things are getting back to that hybrid work environment, I think that's really challenging for a lot of young women, because they may have certain expectations, they may have certain requirements, and that I'm not saying that that's a good or a bad thing,
Mm.
but when they find themselves going back into a more traditional workplace, I think it can be very confronting. And so I think there's a really good opportunity for, I think we're now called seasoned professionals, which it sounds like a bit
Not
of a,
mature. We're
yeah.
not mature, we're seasoned.
I'm not sure how I feel about that word. I feel like I'm about to be popped in an oven. Um, but um, but but to use that experience to help young women to understand what it is like in a workplace environment, and how they can still find their power, their executive presence, their influence in those workplace environments.
Mm.
Simply how to interact with a group of people, a group of strangers,
Mm.
who you don't know, and you can't do it from the comfort of your bedroom, with a TV screen.
You know what, you touched on a real sore point there for me, and that is the whole influence of social media and devices, sort of, and the fact that they're so fixated on communicating through a device, through texting, without, you have no emotion in how you're communicating with people. You don't have the eye contact. You can't feel, or sense what they're thinking at the time through all of this activity. And I think it's a dying art almost, isn't it, for the next generation coming through? I really worry about, well, how effective are they going to be as business leaders if they can't stand in a room with strangers and actually initiate a conversation? and introduce themselves properly and listen to what other people are saying, where's it going to go? Where's it going to go?
I'm not sure it would be my answer, but I think there are some of those skills that if we can at least help rejuvenate some of those base, how literally to be in a room full of people in a physical meeting, to make sure that those skills aren't lost, that it's not a dying art, but they are actually able to be trained and skilled. Even now, and you probably experience it too. I have virtual meetings sometimes, and people are in a large workplace with their noise cancelling headphones on and their microphone. But I know there's a whole sea of people, just basic decisions about when do you meet at your desk versus book the meeting room. There's some
Well,
really basic etiquette things that
oh,
I think they're being lost because we've had this period of interruption. So yeah, there's a lot of work there.
yeah. And I think there's a lot of open air workspaces now where people don't necessarily have that little corner they can go to or their own office area, even the cubicles. Remember the cubicles?
That's right. Yep. Yep.
I mean, we thought they were, oh my God, who's listening to me, when you were talking. But now that's almost like total privacy because
Yes.
all of these big open spaces that people work in, I would just, and you have no designated space. You just find a space every time you go in. I would find that really, really difficult to
Yes.
do. But I don't know. It's a strange old world sometimes, I think now.
It is. There's lots of different challenges that I think young professionals will encounter and are encountering. And look, and there's a lot of things that they can teach us. And
Well,
that's the great beauty of working with people of all ages, is that there's absolutely those things that they can teach us.
yeah.
But equally, we've got some smarts that we've developed over the years. They may be little things, but they can actually make life a lot easier and a lot better in that group in-person dynamic. So they can help us with the Zoom rooms, and we can help them with the meeting rooms.
Yes, we might be dinosaurs, but we're not dead yet, right?
That's exactly right.
Oh, so do you think you'll still be doing this in 5 years' time?
Look, I don't think so, to be perfectly honest. I took over Women's Network Australia 3 years ago, always with the intention of hopefully making it bigger and better, and then passing the baton on to someone else. I don't believe that business networks, should exist around one person. I'm very much a collaborative style of person. So the type of network that I've tried to build is one where we have a lot more women involved and featured through our network. And that's quite a deliberate thing, because I want the network to go on and continue to grow and meet the needs of the members, not meet my needs. I'm just a carrier of the baton onto the next person. So I think, I'm looking forward to doing some different things. As you mentioned at the outset, I've got a couple of board roles that I'm involved in. And that can be a mental gymnastics at times, working certainly in the not-for-profit board space. So I probably see my career moving in a slightly different direction in the next 5 years. But look, at the same time, I'll always continue to be in some ways focused on helping women to succeed. That's always been my, I guess, passion and purpose, and I'm sure that will continue for however long I can contribute.
Well, that's where we have a very strong alignment, Cheryl, is helping
Yes,
other women, empowering other women to succeed. So
absolutely.
thank you so much for your discussion today.
Thank you.
a fabulous, easy to have discussion with you, I think.
Oh, good. Well, that's part of executive presence.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? Being able to feel comfortable to have a conversation with someone who you don't know intimately, but you just know on a business level. And it's been an absolute delight talking to you. So for those women who might be listening who are thinking, well, what's this Women's Network, all about? How can they
Yes.
find out more about it or get in touch with you?
Jump on the website. It's womensnetwork.com.au. Plenty of information there about the network. Some fantastic blogs as well. You know, I always find that one of the strengths of our organisation is how our members share their knowledge. And we have a very big blog of, you know, there's not a subject that someone in our network hasn't written on, including executive presence, I'm sure. In fact, you've probably written a blog, Julie. So, yeah, that's the best ways to find out. But we're also active on social media. So just look for Women's Network Australia.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and I'm very jealous of you being up there in Queensland.
Oh, look, it is a gorgeous day, I'd have to say. So thank you for tolerating me being outside.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Cheryl.